Welcome back for my second video where we're going to make a few new weapons that have different behaviors than the sword that you see here. Right now we've made a sword that kind of has this arcing swing, but in the interest of diversifying the weapons the player has, I want to kind of create a spear that lunges forward and then an axe that has kind of combination of those properties. So let's get to work on those. So first up is to load their graphics. So I'm going to load both the axe and the spear at the same time just to save trips bouncing back and forth. So this is going to be SPR underscore weapon underscore spear. And I'm going to import. I'm going to import the spear. And then I do need to rotate it, so I want to go to edit image, rotate all frames clockwise. And actually the way the light works on this, it looks like I probably want to flip it as well, so that the lighting looks a little bit better on this. I don't know if the sword needs that either, so maybe I could do that to the sword to make the lighting look a little bit better. All right, and now the axe. So we're going to, well, actually, while we're still on the spear, we do need to update the collision. So I'm going to set it to ellipse, and I'm going to make it so that the collider is just the tip of the sphere, so that this is the part that damages monsters. The rest of the spear does not. So as opposed to the sword, which is, kind of a wide swinging arc, this is a very precision poke type of weapon. I think that's, oh yeah, we also need to set the origin. So I'm going to switch it over to custom, and then oh, that's right, I'm probably need to exit out of the collision mask. And then I'm going to position this somewhere around the midpoint where it might make sense for the player to be holding the spear. So I'm going to pick right there. And we can tweak that later. So we're going to then load up another sprite. This is going to be SPR underscore weapon underscore axe. And we're going to import the axe. I'm going to do the same edits to it. So I'm going to rotate it and then flip it. And then also update the collision mask. Set it to manual ellipse. And I want that part to be the collision. And then I'm just going to drag the anchor point somewhere that makes sense. So I guess right around there. All right. So for objects, this is going to be relatively quick because they don't have any code. We just have to set the settings. So like with the sword, you can see that I had an arc and a melee frame that I set. And the parent kind of contains all of this. So the parent is going to have all that data. So we could just duplicate the sword. We can right click the sword, hit duplicate. This will be obj weapon underscore spear. We'll duplicate that. This will be obj underscore weapon underscore axe. And now we've got to open these up and swap out their sprites. Part of me feels like I should have put that in a different spot. So there's the spear, and then the axe. Now, for what it's worth, it might have been possible to not need to make separate objects for each sub-weapon, because I could have probably just graphics swapped on the object melee parent, but I don't really see that it's a lot of extra work to just create these objects, and it'll just make it easier to spawn whichever one I want. So I'm not too terribly upset by the fact that I'm not just graphic swapping the parent. All right, so we have all these new weapons, but we're going to need to program the parent to be a little bit, to have the properties that we want. I do want to add one more property to the instance variables, and this is going to be called poke_position. I couldn't think of a better name for that. And poke position is going to track where the spear is in its lunging forward state. All right, now let's edit the create step. So with the create step, we do need to add the initial starting point for the poke. So anything that kind of like pokes out. So spears, lances, daggers. Those would all be probably pokey weapons in my opinion. So that would be poke position is equal to negative melee poke divided by 2. So half of the position back. So kind of similar to what we're doing with the angle, starting at half of the angle away. The poke, you're starting halfway into the player, so it's going to kind of, lunge out. And so for the poke, I'm going to, so I need this underneath angle start, I believe. Actually, that needs to go after I do. Well, actually, so I probably, so here's kind of the concern. These positions, I probably want to do it with angle start. I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I would want. So x plus equals length direction, poke underscore position, comma direction. Well, we could use start angle. Or angle underscore start. This will get overridden really fast anyway, so it will have to like kind of see at the frame it appears to catch this if this is going to be off. So it gets its position, then it gets slid back. So then in the begin step, we just have to adjust for that as well. So what we could copy and paste it, but I'll type it again from scratch. So we're going to jump over to begin step, and it's going to move with the player. It's going to rotate a little bit with the player, and then we will poke forward with it. So poke position is going to be melee poke divided by, melee. Melee. That word always escapes me. The melee frames so that it adjusts it to a even speed, so it kind of proportionalizes it. And then transform it. And do the same for Y. Did I make sure? Yeah, that's X and Y. Okay. So this looks good. Now, all we've got to do is spawn this instead whenever I click the button. instead of one of the other weapons. So I can, well, actually, I also need to set the properties. So for the spear, I want to edit its properties. So the spear shouldn't have an arc, but it should have a poke. Now, the poke is kind of hard to really anticipate what would look good, but we could try something like 80, and so that would go out 80 pixels. Actually, it'll go out 40 pixels because it starts halfway behind, and then by the time it finishes its poking, it won't. It'll only go out half of this. So that's something I probably might need to consider. Well, would it? Yeah, because it'll only do 80. So what we might want to do... Well, I don't know. That's probably fine how it is. Then we could adjust the speed. Like, if we want this to be a little bit faster, we could drop the speed to 20, and then none of the other things need to change. For the axe, what we could set, maybe I want the axe to swing in a bigger arc, but I want it to be noticeably slower. And I'll give the axe a tiny bit of poke so it kind of like lunges out a little bit. So inside of the player, all we've got to do is change the weapon that gets spawned when we click, and then we should see it. So we'll try the spear next. And so that's kind of gets the spear traveling out of your hand. Now, you could make the animation more complex. Like, you can have it reel back and then reel forward. But I don't really want to overcomplicate it. You can just sit there with the math and tweak it to make it look a little bit more realistic. So if that's still too far, we can always just lower the value. So if that seems a little too far, then instead of a poke of an 80, we could go poke 60, and then that would be a little bit shorter. If we go really short, like 30, we should really see it kind of. And keep in mind that the actual distance it's going to travel, it is hard to measure. So like you might want to line the player up like that and see. So like here, it's reaching kind of just over the edge of the grass. If we go up to 80, and we get into a similar position, you can see that it made it further across the grass. So it is clearly going out further the higher the poke. So that number could stand to have some adjustment to it. And that said, I still think the formula could use a tiny bit of refinement, but I'm happy with how it is. It doesn't need to be hyper-realistic. And then we just want to get the axe to work. So I'm going to switch this over to axe. Now, I do plan on implementing some kind of weapon switch or even an inventory in the next video so that we can have a more clever way of making these weapons appear. Now, looking at this seems like a little bit of a problem. Whenever I'm swinging it on that side of the screen, it looks kind of silly. So that tells me that I need to do a quick flip of the sprite if it's over on the left side. So that's just going to be in the parent, in the start, and so the part where it says left side. Then we'll just flip it. So image Y scale equals -1. And so that will flip the image for when it's appearing on the left side. And so now we've got a reasonable looking axe. So we'll wrap up here. This makes this a little bit shorter of a video. But what we're going to explore in the next video is some kind of way to switch between all of these weapons. Maybe just using the keys, but hopefully with an inventory system. So I'll see you in the next video, and thank you for watching.